People love the GOAT debate, the greatest of all time. Whether it's the infamous MJ versus LeBron discussion, with a few Kobe guys sprinkled into the mix for the NBA. In the NFL, when it comes to the quarterback position, it's Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and Joe Montana that draw most of the attention. You know the deal. Fans love to support their guy, or the player that they most enjoyed watching. But another discussion has since emerged in the NFL world, beyond the all-important quarterback position, and it has built up some steam in recent weeks, especially after Randy Moss came out of nowhere and took some unsolicited shots at the former 49ers great, Jerry Rice, the man who is widely accepted as the greatest wide receiver of all time. Interestingly, Moss has had more than his fair share of backers, as well as the obvious detractors. But when you take a closer look at the exact trajectory of their career arcs and not just their total production, because Rice played significantly longer than Moss, it's actually much closer than you might think between the two of them. Especially if you spent your childhood listening to older fans gush about San Francisco's Golden Boy. In fact, some people who came out in defense of Randy Moss have made some pretty compelling cases that Moss, not Rice, is the greatest wide receiver of all time. So let's take a dive in and take a quick look at how this controversy was sparked, and then delve into the facts to see if Randy Moss was right in dissing one of the league's all-time legends. For starters, the incident in question took place on the podcast of another Mercurial Hall of Fame wide receiver, Terrell Owens, host of T.O. and Hatch, a show he does with Matthew Hatchett, another former NFL wide receiver. Partway through the show, Hatchett asked Moss who he thought the best wide receiver of all time was, and Moss fired back with a pretty aggressive, direct response.
Randy, who's the best receiver to ever play in the NFL?
You talking to him
already? Okay, so
I'll put myself first. I'll put T.O. second. And I think Jerry's probably third or fourth. I'm talking about dominating the game and changing the game of football. I don't live on statistics, because if you live on statistics and live on championships, that's all political. You've seen guys released or cut from a team just by a couple words in the media. You've seen guys not given contract just because the color of their skin. So I think that you gotta throw politics out of the game of football. And look at the impact of what each individual was able to make in the game of football.
Okay, Randy, I see you. Although it's frustrating to see these debates play out after the players' careers are over, not that Moss and Rice would have overlapped for any significant amount of time anyway, but it is refreshing to see guys speak candidly in the media. This is sports we are talking about. Keep that same braggadocio energy you had growing up, when who was the best was still a cool thing to argue amongst your friends. And that attitude was something that neither player had any shortage of throughout their playing days and into their post-playing career. There are actually a surprising number of parallels between the two Hall of Fame wide receivers. Both guys started making a significant impact in the league early, after coming out of rather obscure colleges. Rice played his college ball at the little-known Mississippi Valley State, an HBCU that is now playing in the 1AA Southwestern Athletic Conference. Rice developed into a Division I AA All-American in MVSU's high-tempo offense and put up gaudy numbers, enough so that he eventually garnered attention from NFL scouts. He caught 24 passes in the game, an NCAA All-Division record. He had 4,693 yards receiving in 4 seasons and finished with 18 Division I AA records. Moss, on the other hand, played for Marshall, which does have full Division I status, but is not necessarily known for its football prowess. And while Rice stayed in school for all 4 years, Moss was an early rendition of the one and done at Marshall, after putting up a preposterous first season. 1,822 receiving yards, 19 yards per reception, 26 touchdowns. Yeah, you could say he was ready for the next level. Both he and Rice ended up overcoming the small school bias to emerge as first-round picks, Moss going 21st overall to the Vikings, and Rice 16th overall to the 49ers. And for as glorious as both wide receivers' starts were to their Hall of Fame careers, they both ended their playing days in similar fashions, bouncing around to a couple of different teams with, well, let's just say mediocre results. Basically, both guys struggled to live up to their insane standard that they set for themselves during their ridiculous primes. The first place where Moss can start building his case for being the greatest wide receiver of all time starts at his roots, in Minnesota, where he burst onto the scene for the Vikings, putting forth one of the best rookie seasons that we've ever seen from a wideout. He, along with Randall Cunningham and Chris Carter, was an integral part of what was a dominant Vikings offense that finished second in total yards, first in total points, and first in pretty much every single passing statistic there is. Of course, it helps to play across from another future Hall of Famer in Chris Carter.
Now, I let my homeboys know, y'all want to keep rolling like this? Then I need to know who gonna be the fall guy, who gonna be driving, because y'all not gonna all do the right stuff now, all right? So I got to teach y'all how to get around all this stuff too. If you gonna have a crew, one of them fools got to know he going to jail. We'll get him out.
We'll get him out.
But what Moss did was special. He finished the year with 1,313 receiving yards and 17 touchdowns, all as a 21-year-old rookie. Even at such a young age, he always seemed to be at his best when the lights were brightest too. In 2 games against Minnesota's vaunted rival, the Green Bay Packers, Moss, who went on to take home that year's NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year award, caught 13 of 17 targets for 343 yards and 3 touchdowns, including a pretty epic Monday Night Football performance, which effectively served as his coming out party, as Moss put the whole league on notice after hauling in 5 catches for $190 and 2 touchdowns. The season did end up being a bit of a disappointment, as the 15-1 Vikes were upended in the NFC title game by the Atlanta Falcons 30-27. But it wasn't for a lack of trying from Moss. He notched a touchdown grab in both of Minnie's playoff games that season, and over 70 yards receiving in each. Although he and Minnesota never came close to achieving the same level of team success that Rice did with the 49ers, there's simply no denying what Moss did during his first 6 years as a Viking. I mean, check out these numbers. They are cartoonish. He averaged just under 1,400 receiving yards per year during that stretch, with his lowest total coming in 2001. When he mustered up a relatively pedestrian total of 1,233 yards. He also managed double-digit receiving touchdowns 5 out of those 6 seasons, including 2 years, 98 and 03, in which he got to 17. That's over a touchdown per game. Now, that isn't to say that Rice didn't have an excellent start to his legendary career. He hit double-digit touchdowns 4 out of his first 6 seasons, and actually eclipsed 1,500 yards twice en route to averaging 1,311 yards per season. Not quite as epic as Moss's 1,395, but still, clearly not scrub numbers. Keep in mind, Jerry Rice was entering a storied organization that was not only rich with history and tradition, but was also pretty damn good at the time. I mean, the team had literally just won the Super Bowl the year before they drafted Rice. The only reason they were able to get Rice is because the small school bias hurt his draft stock, and they still had to trade their first 2 picks for New England's first-round choice, the 16th overall selection, as well as a third-round pick swap to jump in front of the rival Cowboys at 17. That's not to take away from what Rice did early in his career, though. It's merely a stating of facts that should hopefully provide some context as to what both guys actually accomplished. Sadly for Moss, after year 6, his case does start to get a little bit murky, as some of the pre-draft character concerns started to rear their ugly heads. Obviously, the fake mooning incident against Green Bay in the 05 playoffs was overstated, but many believe that it was the push Minnesota needed to try and sell high on Moss. According to the team's former owner, Red McCombs, Moss was shocked because he had lost his place in the locker room. In McCombs' exact words, "The reason I traded him was because Randy had kind of lost his place in the locker room. He kind of lost his place with our other leaders on the team." As an owner of a sports team, when you sense that you got a player who loses his place in the locker room, regardless of what kind of talent he's got, you have to make a move. I made a move.
Making moves.
So, after the season, they shipped him out to Oakland, recouping the Raiders' 7th overall pick in the next year's draft and linebacker Napoleon Harris. The Moss and Oakland experiment was not pretty. He totaled over just 1,600 yards in his 2 seasons there and was publicly disgruntled pretty much the entire time. I mean, he started off the 06 season telling the media, "It's crazy around here, man. I'm just not thrilled with the way things are going on around here." Not exactly what you want to hear from a guy you recently traded a first-round pick for. And while Oakland wasn't able to recoup too much value for Moss, his brief stay in Oakland weirdly worked out for him, as it served as a vehicle to get him to New England, where he and Tom Brady put together one of the most insane seasons ever, the infamous 18-1 campaign from 2007. Moss opened up the entire Patriots offense for Tom, who broke the passing touchdown record at the time, notching 50 of them. Meanwhile, Moss's 2007 season featured touchdowns in 13 of 16 games, including 8 multi-touchdown contests. He also had 9 100-yard games and 6 touchdown receptions for 40 or more yards. Altogether, he finished with 98 catches for 1,493 yards and a record-breaking 23 touchdowns. In fairness to Rice, when he set the initial record of 22 touchdowns, it did come in a strike-shortened season, meaning he did it in only 12 games, which is absurd. But them's be the breaks, I guess. All things considered, it's tough to delineate between the two Hall of Famers. Physically, Moss was on another level. He stood 6'4" and had freakish athleticism, which allowed him to outleap almost every defensive back that ever had the misfortune of lining up with him. But Rice had the team success and the overall professionalism on his side, which allowed him to play longer at a higher level, and without any embarrassing stains on his resume like Moss's Oakland days. Both guys have made a case for sure. At their peaks, there is no stopping either one. Moss's was a little bit brighter, and Rice's was much longer, so it depends on what you value. Join us in the comment section and let us know who you think is the greatest wide receiver of all time. And if you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton, and hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea, because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.